5 days on, Chennai continues to bear the brunt of the massive oil slick after the collision of two ships on Saturday along the Ennore-Chennai coastline. As the shore cleanup continues in their final stages, the Coast Guard has said that almost 50 tons of the sludge has already been collected and around 200 litres is limited to 1,500 square metres. According to reports, an estimated 20 tons of oil was spilled, which according to environmentalists could have a huge long-term impact on the marine life and as well as on the fishermen community. The spill has also affected the Marina and Bisan Nagar beach as the spill has reached up to 35 kilometers. In fact, here is my colleague Akshaya getting us this report. She got a chance to speak to an eyewitness who recounts the exact sequence of events.
In one of the most exclusive footages that we are getting you from the Bay of Bengal, I'm 6 kilometers away from the Ennore port, and it is seen that for the first time we are having an eyewitness of the incident right in front of us right now. Shankar had gone along with his men for fishing that day, and he had witnessed the entire accident, the two ships colliding closer to the Ennore port. Shankar, அன்னைக்கு என்ன நடந்ததுன்னு கொஞ்சம் விவரமா சொல்றீங்களா?
அன்னைக்கு ஒரு 3 மணி அளவு நாங்க வந்து தொழிலுக்கு வந்தோம். இந்த எண்ணூர் ஆர்பார் கிட்ட ஒரு 2 கிலோமீட்டர் தள்ளி ரெண்டு கப்பலும் மோதி, ஒரு கப்பல் ஆர்பார் சரக்கு இறக்கிட்டு வந்த கப்பல், எம்டி கப்பல் ஒன்று வந்து சரக்கு இறக்க போகிற கப்பல் ஒன்று வந்தாங்க. 2 கப்பலும் நேருக்கு நேர் மோதிக்கிச்சு. ரெண்டும் வந்து மோதி ஒரு கப்பல் ஒன் சைடு ஆகிடுச்சு, சாஞ்சிருச்சு. அதில் உள்ள ஆயில் என்ன பண்ணால் ஓப்பன் பண்ணி விட்டாங்களோ இல்லை அதே உடச்சிச்சுன்னு தெரியல பைப்பு. நான் அதுக்கு ரொம்ப அந்த இருட்டில் தெரியல. ஆனால் ஒரு 10 அடிக்குள்ளே தான் நாங்கள் பார்த்தோம். கப்பல் வந்து ஒன் சைடு ஆகிட்டு ஆயிலாம் ஊற்றுது, பம்பு செட்டில் ஊற்றுற மாதிரி ஆயில் ஊற்றுது. ஒரு அரை மணி நேரம் இருக்கும். 4-5 போஸ் கார்டு வந்து நேவி வந்து கப்பலை இழுத்துட்டு போயிட்டாங்க. 4 மணிக்கு அந்த கப்பல் தெரியுது பாருங்க, பாரு, அதான் அந்த கப்பல், ப்ளூ கலர் கப்பல், அடிப்பட்ட கப்பல், ஆயில் ஊற்றின கப்பல். அந்த இடித்த கப்பல் அது போயிடுச்சு. அன்றைக்கி போயிட்டாங்க. இந்த கப்பல் தான் இருக்குது, அடிப்பட்ட கப்பல் தான் இருக்குது. அன்றைக்கி அடிப்பட்ட நேரம் 4 மணி, காலையில் விடிய காலம் 4 மணி.
Shankar here is telling us that the incident happened around 4 a.m. in the morning on January 28th, the Saturday, and it was seen that at 3 a.m. when this gentleman and his crew started to the sea, very soon after they saw a head-on collision between an empty ship that was coming from the Ennore port and the other ship which was loaded. The ship that is now there, the blue ship that he is identifying, was fully loaded and was coming there, and both the ships had an head-on collision. And after the head-on collision, this blue ship was toppled to one side, and the oil leak from it lasted for close to half an hour, and they were 10 feet away from the incident is what Shankar is telling us. And he said that close to half an hour after the incident, 5 naval and coast guard ships had come and anchored the boat and had later driven the ship into the port. And now you can see the identified boat still here at the Ennore port, and Shankar and his crew are saying that this is a very major incident that has cost their livelihood. People are not buying their fishes, and now even they're not able to go to the sea because of the oil issues that happens to the fiber boats as well as their net. From the Bay of Bengal, closer to the Ennore port, with camera person Daniel, this is Akshaya Nath from Chennai for India Today.
Now I'm going to go across to Devi Goenka, an environmentalist who's joining us on the broadcast. Devi, what do you make of the visuals that we have been showcasing, in the last few days, and the reports that our correspondents are sending of the Coast Guard and other volunteers manually trying to scoop out the sludge in huge buckets? I mean, does India or the southern states in particular have a proper oil spill contingency plan?
I think the entire country has a contingency spill plan, but the plan remains on paper. The Coast Guard is supposed to be the nodal agency, and the Coast Guard is mandated to rush into this situation and take complete charge of what is happening. and it seemed very obvious that for 48 hours nothing of that kind happened. And in a situation like this, every second's delay is fatal, because for lack of prompt response, the oil spreads further and further, and then containing it becomes more and more difficult. In fact, ideally what should have happened is the Coast Guard team should have flown in and tried to plug the leak. If plugging the leak was not possible, they should have tried to pump out the oil into a barge or into another vessel, and they should have tied up containment booms around the leakage to make sure that the oil does not spread to the maximum extent possible.
Right.
And apparently it seems none of this was actually done. So this is really what is shocking.
True.
We have the
Absolutely.
plans on paper, we have the men, we have the machines, we have the equipment.
But do we have the
they were not
skill, or do
deployed
we
when
have
they
the
should have been
presence of mind
deployed.
to execute
And
it?
when they
And
were
that's an
deployed,
important
it was
question.
too little, too late.
Right, Debbie. Just stay with me. In fact, I would like to play out for our viewers a report that has been sent in by India Today's Akshata Nandgopal. She's in fact on the beach where that massive cleaning up operation has been going on, and this is what she got to see.
First show you what's happening here. I'm standing exactly where currently the cleanup is happening. You see the water there completely polluted. You can see the kind of oil is very slippery, so we're struggling to stand as well at this particular point, filled with rocks, completely covered in this oil. So they've put up that barricade there. They're trying to clear it up, but because of course of the viscosity, it is surfacing on top. They're trying to clear it up manually is what they told me. I spoke to several people here from the Indian Coast Guard. They are currently also trying to figure out if they can continue using these suckers to try and pull out as much oil as they can. But you can see the rocks around here, all of it is completely filled with the oil. People are also gathering, which is why you see police presence in the area trying to stop locals from entering this place. It's pretty dangerous because they could slip and fall into the water as well. The Coast Guard also told me that they're expecting that possibly by this evening they will be able to clear out this mess, but it looks unlikely from what I can see at least. There's a lot of oil and over the last many days, while efforts are being made, they're saying that possibly by next week, if things do not resume back to normal, they will be then forced to bring in such apparatus from across the country where they will be able to clean the ocean literally. They will literally use this, make it oil cakes, pull it out, and there will be a foam of sorts that will then be cleared out to ensure that the sea is not affected by this oil. But is it a little too late is the question. Looks like authorities may have woken up a little too late to what's happening here.
I'm going to go now across to my colleague Akshaya, in fact, who sent us that report from the boat where the exact, ship collision took place. Akshaya, now you're on Marina Beach, which just a few weeks back was the epicenter of that entire Jallikat movement. Now, coming back to this oil spill story, what do you see around you? Can you just give us an update on the cleaning up operations?
Well, Avantika, I'm right now at the Marina Beach, which is 30 kilometers away from actually where the incident took place.
Okay.
But it is seen that the entire shore of Marina also has the oil spill all over. And it's seen that the sand is completely filled with oil. That you can see the people standing in orange jackets there. They're cleaning up the entire mess out of this place. And the cleaning process at the Marina is also taking place for the last 5 days. So, Avantika, it needs to be seen that, when the Coast Guard as well as government officials said that they've contained the entire oil spill, it needs to be seen how exactly did they do it, because 30 kilometers away we're seeing the impact here, and still the cleaning process is happening at the Marina and further away at the Besant Nagar as well as the Thiruvanmiyur beaches. So the entire coastal region of Chennai has been completely damaged because of this oil spill, and it needs to be highlighted, Avantika. The two main questions that the people have been asking us. One is, was this a human negligence? Because generally in the port, when one ship is entering, another ship is not let out. So who was responsible for giving green signal for both the ships? And secondly, what happened to the collided ships? Yes, we know that one is inside the port, but what about the other ship?
Absolutely.
Who is held responsible for these damages? Who will be held accountable, and who will be paying compensations for all these people who have been affected?
Absolutely. Akshaya, stay with me. If I may go back to our guest, Mr. Goenka, I wanted to ask you that each oil spill, has a unique aspect to it and also calls for very careful consideration, because the contamination needs to be checked, it needs to be contained. Typically, how really can an oil spill be controlled?
Well, as I said, time is of the essence. 20 tons of oil, if the Coast Guard had reacted promptly and reached there within hours, could have very easily been contained by plugging the hole in the ship, mopping up whatever had spilt out, and putting a containment boom around the ship. If you had done that within a few hours, instead of having to deal with a 35-kilometer length of oil spread over several square kilometers into the sea, they would have had to deal with a few hundred square meters of surface. And it would have been easier for them, much easier for the environment, and of course the best thing that could have happened to protect the fishing community and their livelihood.
And sir, speaking
but
of the
for 48
environment,
hours apparently nothing happened. The ship was...
So speaking of the environment,
Yes.
so what would be the long-term effects of the kind of impact this oil spill would have on the environment?
Well, it's actually, to explain this, the oil actually contains many fractions of different densities and different properties. So what you have is the cruder fractions actually sink and form this cold, that tar-like substance and sludge. The lighter fractions evaporate, and you actually have a mixture of chemicals then in the water, which can be quite toxic to marine life. Obviously the heavy part of the sludge which is not cleaned up will stay in the system, mix with the mud and the sediments in the bottom, and remain there until it decomposes. And I think given the temperature conditions and so on in that part of the country, the impact would possibly last for more than a year. And of course, if the breeding grounds of the fish are being impacted by the oil pollution, then it will take a much longer time for the fish populations to recover. And in the meantime, the fishing community that is completely dependent on daily fish catches for their livelihood will not be able to earn their livelihood for, I think, several months. And there are reports of fisher folk who lost their nets, or nets have been completely ruined because of the oil. The boats have been impacted. So this is a serious kind of incident which has got out of hand, mainly because no prompt action was taken to contain the oil spill.
Right, certainly. Mr. Goenka, just stay with us. In fact, we would like to also play out another bit of reaction coming in from the fisher community and eyewitnesses as well. They have been speaking to India Today's Akshaya, and this is what they had to tell her.
Fifth day and the oil spill work is still continuing. They're trying to remove the oil spill that has happened here, and you can see that men wearing orange jackets are using their hands and buckets to remove the oil that has been spilled here. 2 pumps were installed, but they're not working effectively. So people from the nearby fishing hamlets have come out and are using buckets to remove this oil spill. Anna, unga kupatla indha aalunga vande indha ennai ella edukranga.
பிரஷர் மேல தான் நாங்க எடுக்கிறோம். எல்லாம் மீன்காரங்க நாங்க தான் எடுக்கிறோம். இந்த ஆயில்னால எங்களுக்கு நிறைய பாதிப்புனா நாங்களே வந்து நிறைய ஒர்க் பண்ணி எல்லாம் எடுத்து அப்புறப்படுத்தி எல்லாம் இது பண்றோம். அதனால எங்களுக்கு அந்த வலை போட்டா மட்டும் எங்களுக்கு வலையெல்லாம் டேமேஜ் ஆகுது. போட்டு வலையெல்லாம் டேமேஜ் ஆகுது. அதனால எங்க பாதிப்புனுக்கு அவங்க சொல்லி சீக்கிரம் எடுக்கிறனால இப்போ நாங்கள் ஒரு வாரமாக நாங்கள் இந்த ஆயிலை நாங்கள் எடுத்து அப்புறப்படுத்திட்டே இருக்கிறோம். இப்போ மேற்கொண்டு முயற்சியாக இருக்குது, இன்னும் நிறையா நாள் ஆகும். அது இதனால ரொம்ப எங்களுக்கு பாதிப்பு.
For the last 5 days, these fishermen are not going to the sea. The main task is to remove the oil spill that has happened here. What they're saying is, unless and until this oil spill is not removed, they cannot venture into the sea, nor can they use their nets. And since they don't have any other means to remove the oil spill, they're ready to use their own hands. Even though they know the hazard that this will be causing on their health, they're saying that the sea is like their mother and they'll do anything to revive her back to a normal situation. With camera person Daniel, from Ennore, this is Akshaya Nath for India Today.
Going back to our guest and environmentalist, Mr. Debi Goenka. Sir, can you just put things in perspective for us that despite this cleanup operation, despite all efforts being made by the Coast Guard and thousands of volunteers on the sea to ensure that the cleaning up process now finishes quickly, even if the sludge is removed, is scooped out from the sea into the buckets, and every effort is made that the contamination is restricted, is the water then clean to be consumed? Doesn't the water get toxic as a result of an oil spill like this?
Well, I can tell you that 100% removal is never going to be possible. Secondly, as I said, if it had been contained initially, dealing with 20 tons of oil is not that difficult at all. But once you allowed it to spread, and for 5 days it has been allowed to spread, cleaning it up has become a massive operation that is, clearly visible. The Coast Guard is unable to cope with it. It also seems that the equipment is not functioning, and if the pumps are not working, they've had to resort to manual removal using buckets and hands, which is again another tragedy by itself. And since the oil has reached the rocks and the shore, it's physically going to be impossible to scrape out the oil from every rock and from the beach. They can only try and remove as much as they can reach, and the visible portions. So I think a significant amount of the oil will remain in the ecosystem and continue to damage the environment until such time the natural processes allow it to decompose.
All right.
And as I said earlier, that might take up to a year to let that happen.
Right, sir.
And in the meantime, the marine life is impacted, the fishing communities are impacted.
Right.
And the question is, who's going to compensate these people for their losses?
Yes, that's true, and that's the big
action?
demand. That's the voice coming in from the fishermen community. Mr. Devi Goenka, thank you so much for your time and joining us on the broadcast.